On a Pennsylvania porch in July of 2019, I watched 30 Amish people eat supper outside in heavy mosquito country, and not one of them got bitten. Not one. I had fresh bites on both arms from the parking lot of a roadside market an hour earlier. These people had nothing. Not the children running barefoot across the yard. Not the grandmother in the rocking chair shelling peas into a tin bowl. Not the old man in the straw hat leaning on the fence. The mosquitoes were there. I could hear them whining in the tall grass by the pond, that thin metallic sound that means trouble for anyone in short sleeves, but they would not land on those people. And the only difference I could see between me and them was a small ceramic crock burning on the porch rail, no bigger than a coffee mug, with a cotton wick and a thin curl of pale smoke rising into the summer air. My name is Eli. That little crock cost less than $2 to make, and what is inside it lasts a whole family the entire season, from the first warm night in May to the killing frost in October. Now here is the part that should make you angry. The bug spray business is a giant. According to figures from Grand View Research, the global insect repellent market runs to billions of dollars a year and is still climbing. That is a lot of money that does not want to compete with a ceramic pot of melted beeswax and a handful of garden herbs, and there is one fact in particular they would rather you never heard. Back in 2001, researchers at Iowa State University found that the active compound in catnip, an ordinary garden plant, was about 10 times more effective at repelling mosquitoes than DEET, the synthetic chemical in nearly every bug spray sold in America. 10 times. That is a real published study, and you can look it up. It should have changed everything. It changed nothing, because you cannot patent a 50-cent seed packet. $2. Lasts all summer. 10 times stronger than the can. That is what this video is about. Now, you might be sitting there right now thinking, Eli, that is all fine for the Amish, but I do not keep bees. I do not have an herb garden. I live in a regular house on a regular street built in 1968 with a little concrete back patio and no farm anywhere in sight. Good. I am glad you are thinking it because I want to answer it head on. This works for you too, exactly the same, and I am going to show you precisely how. You do not need to grow a single thing if you do not want to. Every last ingredient in that Amish crock can be bought at a farmer's market, ordered from a small American supplier online, or picked up at a garden center, and the whole lot of it comes to less than $25 total. And that $25 is not a summer's expense. It sets you up for years, because a little beeswax and a few jars of dried herbs go a very long way. You do not need land, you do not need bees, you do not need 1 ounce of gardening skill or a green thumb or a barn or a single thing your suburban lot cannot provide. What you need is one quiet afternoon, a small ceramic pot you can find at any thrift store for $1, and the recipe I am walking you through right now. So please do not click away telling yourself this is only for people with a farm and a flock of chickens. It is for the man on the patio in Cleveland and the woman on the third-floor balcony in Columbus just as much as it is for the family on the gravel lane in Lancaster. The mosquitoes do not care what kind of house you live in. Neither does the crock. When I asked the woman shelling peas what was in the crock, she looked up with that patient amusement the Amish save for English visitors who finally notice something hiding in plain sight, and she said, "Well, it is just bees' grease and the garden, mostly. Bees' grease and the garden." That phrase stuck in my head for 5 years. I spent those years tracking down what it actually means. Old Pennsylvania German almanacs, 3 Amish beekeepers in Ohio and Indiana, test batches in my own backyard, summer after summer. Here is what I found. The base of the whole thing is beeswax, not the bleached cosmetic pellets you buy online for lip balm, but raw cappings, wax, the kind a beekeeper scrapes off the top of the honeycomb at harvest, the kind that still smells of honey and the inside of a healthy hive. The Amish have kept bees in Pennsylvania since the early 1700s, when the first Swiss-German settlers brought their hives across the Atlantic, and anyone who keeps bees learns fast that the wax is almost as valuable as the honey itself. A strong hive throws off a pound or 2 of surplus wax in a good year, and on a farm with 8 or 10 hives that adds up. You cannot sell it all. You cannot burn it all as candles. So the wax goes into everything. It waterproofs harness leather. It seals jars of preserves. It greases wooden drawer runners. And in a tradition that goes back to at least the 1840s in the Pennsylvania German country, it goes into a small crock with a wick and a precise mix of dried garden plants. And that crock sits on the porch at supper and burns slow and low and clean. Now here is the first thing that surprised me when I started digging. The Amish do not use citronella. They never have. Citronella is a tropical grass from Sri Lanka and Java, and it only became popular in American products after a Chicago perfumer patented a citronella candle in the 1880s. The Amish, being people who use what grows in their own gardens and pastures rather than what gets shipped from across the ocean, never bothered with imported tropical oils. They use 4 plants instead, 4 plants that grow easily in any ordinary temperate climate and that have been part of Pennsylvania German herb gardens since the earliest colonial days. And I am going to give them to you one at a time, because each one earns its place in the crock and each one does a different job. The first plant will surprise you, and you already met it a minute ago. It is the one Iowa State studied, catnip. Yes, the same plant that sends house cats rolling around the kitchen floor in a happy daze is, pound for pound, one of the most powerful mosquito repellents anyone has ever measured. The compound inside it, the one with the long name, nepetalactone, is the very thing that came in at roughly 10 times the strength of DEET in that study. The Amish never needed a university laboratory to tell them this. They had been growing catnip along their garden fences for generations, partly because the honeybees adore the little flowers, and partly because everyone in the family knew that a pinch of it warmed in the porch crock would clear the air of mosquitoes within a few minutes. It grows like a weed, it comes back every year, and a single 50-cent packet of seed will give you more catnip than you could burn in a decade of summers. The second plant is pennyroyal, a low creeping mint with small lavender flowers and a sharp peppery smell. People have used it against biting insects since ancient Rome. But I have to stop here and be very honest with you, because this is important and most videos will not tell you. Pennyroyal is powerful, and that power cuts both ways. The concentrated oil of this plant is genuinely dangerous. It is toxic to the liver, it can cause a pregnant woman to lose her baby, and it has killed people who swallowed it. So I am not going to stand here and call it perfectly safe the way the old-timers casually did. In the crock, used dried, in a small amount, warmed in open outdoor air, and never swallowed, and never put on skin, it is a different thing than the concentrated oil, but you respect it. You keep the oil out of your house entirely, you keep the dried plant away from children and pets, and if you are pregnant or there is any chance you might be, you do not handle this plant at all, and you leave it out of your batch. I will come back to safety in full, because it matters more than any mosquito. The third plant is mountain mint, a native North American plant the Pennsylvania Germans learned about from their Lenape neighbors. It is silvery on the underside of the leaf, and when you crush it, the smell is so strong it stings your eyes for a second. That sting is exactly what you want. Mountain mint thrives on neglect, which is why it has stayed in Amish gardens so long. You plant it once, ignore it for 10 years, and still harvest it every summer. The fourth plant is the one nobody wanted to talk about directly, tansy, a tall, yellow-flowered plant that looks like a wild marigold, and that has been used against pests in Europe since the Middle Ages. And tansy comes with the same warning as pennyroyal, maybe stronger. It contains a compound called thuone that is genuinely toxic in large doses, enough that it has fallen out of modern herbal use, enough that you never swallow it and never let an animal at it. In the crock, it is used in a tiny amount, a teaspoon, never more, and it provides the final deep bitter note that seems to be the thing that finally convinces a mosquito this is not a place it wants to be. 4 plants: catnip, pennyroyal, mountain mint, tansy. 2 of them you handle with real care. All 4, dried and crumbled into warm beeswax in the right proportion, make the thing that sat on that Lancaster porch. Before I move on to the recipe, I want to put one number up against another, because this is the part that ought to stop you cold. A study published in the Journal of Economic Entomology back in the 1950s, work associated with a researcher named Arthur Brown, set out to test a Pennsylvania German beeswax smudge, made from a recipe he got from a Mennonite farmer in Lancaster County, directly against pure DEET. And the old porch smudge came out very nearly as effective as the DEET at keeping mosquitoes from landing inside a 10-foot circle, roughly equal to the strongest synthetic chemical the laboratories had. Cheap to make, pleasant to sit beside. That paper was published, cited a couple of times in the years after, and then it quietly slipped out of the conversation entirely. Nobody followed up on it. No company ever turned it into a product. No magazine ran the story. Now hold that result up against your own wallet for a moment. The average American household spends a few $100s every single summer on mosquito control when you add up the aerosol sprays, the citronella candles, the bug zappers, the yard treatments, and the topical repellents. A few $100s year after year after year for products that, in the case of DEET, the government itself acknowledges can cause skin and eye irritation, and in the case of the permethrin yard sprays, kill not only the mosquitoes but the honeybees, the butterflies, and the fireflies right along with them. The Amish, meanwhile, are spending $2 and sitting on their porches in genuine peace, surrounded by the very pollinators they go out of their way to encourage, with grandchildren running barefoot through grass that has never once been sprayed with anything stronger than a summer rain. There is something deeply wrong with that picture, and I have come to believe the wrongness runs a good deal deeper than mosquitoes. So let me give you the exact recipe, because the proportions matter and the technique matters even more. You need 4 ounces of beeswax, which is about 1.5 sticks of butter in volume. Raw cappings wax from a local beekeeper is best, because it still carries a little propolis, which has its own mild insect-repelling quality, but clean filtered yellow beeswax from a craft store works perfectly well if that is what you can get. You need 2 tablespoons of dried catnip, crumbled fine between your fingers but not ground to powder, 1 tablespoon of dried pennyroyal, if you have decided it belongs in your household after the safety rules I just gave you, 1 tablespoon of dried mountain mint, and 1 teaspoon, no more than that, ever, of dried tansy flowers, the flowers and not the leaves, because the flowers carry the aroma you want and less of the harsher compound you do not. That ratio, roughly 4 parts catnip to 2 parts pennyroyal to 2 parts mountain mint to 1 part tansy, is the proportion I learned from a Wayne County, Ohio beekeeper in the summer of 2021, and it matched almost word for word a faded community cookbook from Holmes County, written out in pencil under the simple heading Skeeter Smudge. You also need a small ceramic crock, something wide-mouthed and stable, about 3 to 4 inches across and a couple of inches deep. An old salt cellar is perfect for it. A chipped piece of stoneware that is no longer fit to hold food is exactly the kind of thing the Amish use, because in their world nothing is ever simply thrown away. You need a wick, which is nothing more than a 3-inch length of cotton butcher's twine, and you need a small metal washer, or a flat coin, to weight the bottom of the wick so it stays standing straight up in the center while the wax cools and sets around it. So before I walk you through melting and pouring it, here is where everything I have gathered from these communities lives in one place. Every recipe, every measurement, every method from this channel is collected together in the description below, in something called the Amish Home System. Now stay with me, because the next part, the technique, is where most people go wrong, and one skipped step is the difference between a pretty candle that does nothing and a crock that clears a porch. Here is the process, step by step. Melt the beeswax in a double boiler over low heat. Never ever melt beeswax in a pan set straight over the flame. Beeswax catches fire at around 400 degrees, and a single moment of inattention turns a nice afternoon project into a kitchen fire that ends the experiment in a hurry. Double boiler, low and slow, a pot of simmering water underneath and the wax in a bowl or a smaller pot above it. Once the wax is fully liquid, which takes about 10 or 12 minutes for 4 ounces, you stir in the dried herbs one at a time, starting with the catnip and finishing with the tansy, gently, with a wooden chopstick or a small wooden spoon, just enough to spread them evenly through the wax. Do not whip it. Do not beat air into it. You want a smooth, herb-flecked mixture that looks a little like a honey mustard dressing with green flakes hanging suspended all through it. Then, and this is the single step that everybody wants to skip and that absolutely nobody should skip, you let the mixture sit on the heat about 5 more minutes, stirring every so often. Those 5 minutes are the whole secret. That is when the oils, the nepetalactone, and the rest leave the dried plant material and dissolve down into the wax itself. Skip those 5 minutes and you have made a pretty candle that smells pleasant and repels nothing at all. Honor those 5 minutes and you have made something that will clear a porch of mosquitoes in about 4 minutes flat. While the infusion is doing its work, get your crock ready. Tie one end of your cotton wick around the metal washer and lower it to the bottom of the crock so the string stands straight up in the middle. You can lay a chopstick across the rim and tie the top of the wick to it to hold it centered, which is what I do, or just hold it in place by hand for the first half minute of pouring. Then pour the warm wax and herb mixture slowly into the crock all around the wick, filling it to about a 1/4 inch below the rim. Let it cool right there on the counter, undisturbed, for at least 4 hours. Do not try to rush it in the refrigerator, because cooling it too fast makes the wax crack and the surface pull into a dimple. After 4 hours, the wax is fully solid, the wick stands up on its own, and you trim the wick down to about a 1/4 inch above the surface. To use it, set the crock on a flat, heat-safe surface at least 3 feet from anything that can catch fire, and touch a match to the wick. The flame is tiny, about the size of the flame on a birthday candle, and it gives off almost no visible smoke at all. What it gives off instead is a slow, steady release of warmed herbal vapor that drifts outward in roughly a 12-foot circle around the crock, and within 4 to 6 minutes, the mosquitoes in that circle simply leave. Here is the thing I really want you to understand, because it is the whole game, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The crock does not kill anything. It does not poison the mosquitoes. They fly off perfectly alive to go bother somebody else, because the air around your crock now carries a cloud of natural plant compounds that scramble the way a mosquito hunts. A mosquito finds you mainly by smelling the carbon dioxide you breathe out. It homes in on that plume of breath from a surprising distance, and then it fine-tunes its approach using your body heat, the lactic acid in your sweat, and the particular smell of your skin. It is a hunting system refined over millions of years, and it is very good. But the warmed vapor coming off this crock jams every part of it at once. The mosquito flies into your porch, gets a thick noseful of catnip and mountain mint, and abruptly cannot smell your breath, cannot smell your skin, cannot orient toward the warm body it knows is sitting right there somewhere nearby. Its whole guidance system goes dark, so it gives up and drifts off to find an easier meal in a yard where the air is clear. And here is the part that quietly knocks the legs out from under the entire bug spray sales pitch. DEET works on the very same principle. It does not kill mosquitoes either. It masks and confuses the exact same signals the mosquito tracks. The only real difference between the two is where it happens. DEET does its masking on your skin, soaked into you, absorbed into your bloodstream in measurable amounts, where in stronger concentrations it can irritate and, in sensitive people, do worse. The porch crock does its masking in the open air around you, where you and your family sit breathing pleasant herb smells while the mosquitoes run into an invisible wall they cannot find their way through. Same exact idea. Wildly different delivery. One costs $2 and grows in a window box. The other costs $10 or $12 a bottle, runs dry in a few weeks, soaks into your skin, and asks you to come back and buy another one every summer for the rest of your natural life. Now I owe you the full safety talk because I take this seriously, and you should too. These are real plants with real chemistry, and respect is the price of using them. Pennyroyal and tansy are the two to watch. Never swallow either one, and never bring the concentrated essential oils into your home, especially pennyroyal oil, which has caused serious poisoning and deaths. If you are pregnant, or trying to be, or even might be, leave both pennyroyal and tansy out of your batch entirely, and do not handle them at all, because both can endanger a pregnancy. Keep the dried herbs, the wax, and the lit crock away from children and away from pets, dogs and cats both, because pennyroyal and tansy are toxic to animals, and a cat that knocks the crock down and licks at it can get truly sick. Keep the flame up high and out of reach, same as any candle. And one more thing that matters more than saving money: If you live somewhere with real mosquito-borne disease where the health department warns about West Nile or anything like it, do not bet your health on a porch crock. A crock that clears the air around your chair is wonderful for an ordinary summer evening. It is not a medical shield. In those places, keep using a proven repellent that the EPA has registered for skin when you actually need protection, and treat the crock as a pleasant addition, not a replacement. Use the old wisdom for comfort. Use modern protection where disease is on the line. The Amish themselves are practical people. They would tell you the same. So why did the rest of us forget this if it worked so well and everyone's grandmother knew it? Because everyone's grandmother truly did know it. Open up an American gardening magazine from anywhere between the 1880s and the 1920s, and you will find this recipe in one form or another over and over again. A smudge of beeswax and pennyroyal for the veranda, a beekeeper's mosquito candle made with catnip and mountain mint, a 1916 Federal Farmers Bulletin on mosquito remedies that points specifically to the beeswax and herb smudges common in the Pennsylvania German communities and calls them highly effective for outdoor use. This was not secret knowledge in any way. It was ordinary, shared, everyday household information, as basic to an American homemaker in 1910 as knowing how to put up tomatoes for the winter. And then something happened to a great deal of that ordinary knowledge in the middle of the 20th century. It got displaced. The chemical boom that followed the Second World War flooded the market with brand new synthetic compounds, many of them first developed for military use, and every one of them was marketed hard to American families as modern, scientific, and superior to whatever quaint thing their grandmothers used to do. DEET came straight out of wartime government research in the 1940s and was released to civilians in the late 50s, and the first aerosol cans of it hit the shelves in the 60s. Within about a decade, it had captured the overwhelming majority of the American repellent market. The old knowledge did not die. Nobody banned it, nobody seized it. It simply got drowned out by louder voices selling more profitable things, and it stayed alive only in the places that never paid those voices any mind. The Amish, the Old Order Mennonites, a few stubborn families back in the hills of Appalachia and the Ozarks who kept doing things their grandparents' way because they saw no compelling reason to change. And I want to be honest with you about the nature of all this, because it would be easy to spin it into something darker than it is. There is no villain in a dark room here. Nobody held a meeting to bury the porch crock. The plain, unglamorous truth is simply this: nobody on this earth ever gets rich by telling you to melt a little wax and crumble a few herbs from your own garden. There is no company, no salesman, no advertising budget behind a free thing you can make yourself. So nobody spent a single dollar reminding you that you could. That is the whole mechanism, not a conspiracy. Just money flowing toward the things money can be made on, and flowing away from the things it cannot. Let me make the practical side easy, because I want you to actually do this. The beeswax is the simplest it has ever been defined. Backyard beekeeping has boomed, and most farmers markets now have someone selling local honey and wax. A 4-ounce block runs a few dollars and makes 2 crocks. If there is no market near you, small American beekeepers ship it online. The herbs are easier still. Catnip seeds cost about $3, and the plant is nearly impossible to kill. Mountain mint is sold at native plant nurseries and loves the dry, sunny corner where nothing else grows. Pennyroyal you can order from any herb seed company if you have decided it belongs in your household under the rules I gave. Tansy grows wild as a roadside weed across much of the eastern states, though if you forage it, be absolutely certain of your identification and never collect from a roadside that has been sprayed, and honestly, given its toxicity, seed from a known source is the safer path. All in, seeds for the herbs you choose plus a starter block of wax comes to around $25, and after the first year your only cost is wax, which you can often trade a beekeeper for in eggs or pies, exactly the way farm families always did. The crocks themselves turn up at estate sales and country auctions and thrift stores for $1 or $2, small stoneware pieces in old salt cellars. You want something heat stable with a flat bottom that holds 3 to 5 ounces. Smaller and you remake it constantly. Larger and the pool gets deep, the flame gets tall, and your batch burns up fast. There is one conversation I think about often. In the summer of 2022, I sat with an elderly Amish woman in Holmes County, Ohio. Her name was Mary. She was 83, and she had been making these crocks every summer since she was 12, which means she had made something like 700 of them in her life. I asked her whether she thought the recipe should be more widely known. She thought about it a long time, sitting on her own porch with a crock burning between us and a thunderstorm building over the corn to the west. Finally, she said, "Well, it isn't a secret. It never was a secret. We just kept doing it after everyone else stopped. And I think that is the whole truth of it. This is not hidden knowledge. It is not proprietary. Nobody is guarding it. It is just old, ordinary household wisdom that got drowned out by louder voices selling costlier things, and it kept going quietly in the places that did not listen. Anyone can learn it. Anyone can do it. The only thing standing between you and a summer of peaceful evenings on your own porch is the willingness to spend one afternoon melting wax and crumbling herbs into a little ceramic pot with a string in the middle. Let me leave you with one more evening. In the summer of 2023, I visited a small Old Order Mennonite community in southern Wisconsin and was invited to a Sunday singing at a family's farm. 40 people, from babies in their mother's arms to a great-grandfather in his 90s, sat out on the lawn as the sun went down, singing hymns in 4-part harmony and a mix of English and Pennsylvania German. The mosquitoes in that part of Wisconsin in late July are the stuff of legend. The family had set out maybe a dozen of these crocks around the edge of the gathering, on fence posts and tree stumps and overturned buckets, and over 3 hours of singing, near a creek, on a humid night, in shorts and short sleeves, I did not see one single person slap at a mosquito. Not one. Afterward, I asked the host what all those crocks cost his family for the year. He did the math in his head and said, "Oh, maybe $12, $15. We make about 20. They last most of the summer. $12 for a whole summer of outdoor evenings for 30-some people." The same family buying commercial sprays would spend a small fortune to get worse results, more chemicals, and a yard with no fireflies in it. So that is the gap between the world the bug spray companies want you to live in and the world that has quietly kept going right alongside it. You can step across it any evening you like. One afternoon, a couple of dollars, a little respect for 2 of the plants, and the willingness to believe that something this old and this simple might just be better than the bright can on the shelf. From 4 years of doing it myself, and from every old hand who has done it their whole life, I am telling you it is. Make the crock. Light it on your porch tomorrow night. See what happens. And when your grandchildren wander over and ask what that pleasant smell is, you tell them it is the smell their great-great-grandparents knew. You tell them it is what we almost lost and what you went and brought back. If this is the kind of recovered knowledge you came here for, subscribe and stay with us, because next week I am showing you the old Amish way to keep food cold through a multi-day power outage with nothing but 2 clay flower pots and a particular kind of sand. Same family of knowledge, same few dollar logic. Until then, melt the wax, light the wick, and take back what was always yours.